So, welcome to today's podcast. So, I'm glad we got started because my guests, we were having a really fun conversation before even getting on here. So, I'm looking forward to this discussion. I'm here with Kim Daly. She's a franchise consultant for FranChoice, which is an interesting name. We'll get into that. But welcome to the show, Kim. Really enjoy our previous conversation, so I know this is going to be great. So, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. So, we were just chatting about things. We have commonality in terms of having kids, thinking about futures. And one of the things that I share with my kids all the time is options, right? Opportunities for change. And your history and your background and expertise is in an unusual space in franchises. And so how did you get into this sort of space?
Yeah, by the grace of God, Tom. So I was planning to follow the more traditional route myself. I was a nutritional biochemist in college, headed to medical school, thought that I was going to spend my life working with professional athletes. And I answered a classified ad in the newspaper that literally changed my life. And the classified ad in the newspaper show my age because what are those? But anyway, it was for a franchise consulting company, not FranChoice, a different one. But it was my first kind of foray into this amazing industry of people helping people and everyday people waking up to live their dreams. And I fell completely in love. And I mean, here I am all these years later, like 25 years later. And franchising has completely changed my life. And it's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because if it can change my life, it can change anybody's life.
Absolutely. So it's interesting because you started off as just a pure entrepreneur in that sense, right? Starting businesses and going through the pains and struggles of that space. So, and then transition to this. So what kind of drew you to making this sort of change?
So after I worked for that company for 3 years, like what was funny for me, Tom, is from the first day on the job, like my first full-time real job, I knew that there was a better way for Kim Daly. Like I remember going home and saying to my dad, "You've done this for how many years?" Like I felt like a chained dog. Like, and like now that I'm a parent, I still remember though, like the glee in my father's eyes, like, oh, she finally gets it. But I had to figure out how to get out of working for somebody else. So by 25, I found an opportunity to leave, started my first company, and I've never looked back. Like I'm 50 today. I'm completely unemployable. Now, my father says, "Kimberly, you've been unemployable since you were 2." I've always been the boss of myself, but I figured it out. But yeah, as to your point, I started a couple of companies in the health and fitness space because that's kind of where my passions are. And then I did that for about 5 years, but I was always like profitable and like, I guess, successful, but I was very lonely.
Mm,
Entrepreneurship is very lonely and franchising is very collaborative. Entrepreneurship is, I was making it up as I went along, and it was like you're always kind of waiting for that. Am I going to get a lucky break? Am I going to get a lucky break? And like part of me, I was turning 30. It's like, Kim, are you just going to live your whole life waiting for some like lucky break, or are you going to go build something that really has a foundation underneath it? And so that's when I turned back to franchising and I found FranChoice. I mean, who knew that I'd be doing it all these years later, but this is just the greatest business in the world for me. And I've had the time of my life. Like I feel immensely blessed to do what I do every day for the last 21 years. As a franchisee, I walk my talk, but I'm a business owner. It is what I make it. So the more I put in, the more I can make. But there are rules and guidelines to what I can do. I pay royalties back to my corporate office. So everything that I'm teaching everybody else to do by investing in a franchise, I'm doing myself for the last 21 years.
yeah, no, it's important to was that eat your own cooking type thing, and you come with a kind of great knowledge of what it takes to run your own business and realizing whether it's right for you. Like that's what I always think about is trying to find the right fit. Like this is an investment, right, in
Right.
your career, your life, and you got to figure out if it's a good fit, not just kind of follow someone's lead. So It's interesting because stepping out of the corporate world into quote unquote entrepreneurship, I felt the same way as you. I was a little bit lonely, kind of because you're used to being around so many people, and so recognizing those sort of unique things about yourself is really important as you dive into something like this.
And it's
So,
not like when you're a franchisee, it's not like you're relying on other people. It's just the camaraderie of having
mm,
other people that are running the same business as you. So when you bump up against a challenge like a pandemic or a recession or a stock market crash or things that can impact your business, you're not out there trying to solve the problems of your business on your own. That collectively you can come together because we're not competitors, we're all shareholders in the same brand as franchisees. So we can come together and share best practices. We can lean into people who aren't struggling with something that we're struggling with at that moment, right? And sometimes we get to be the person that other people are leaning on. So it's a healthy environment of, like, somebody once said to me that, wow, a franchise really is sort of like a giant master class. I was like,
mm,
that's brilliant. That's exactly what it is. So we're all out here working independently, living our lives with our own dreams, building the business of our dreams. But we're doing it in the supported environment where, again, we're not alone. There are other people who can help us when we need.
no, that's great. Yeah, and it was always resonates to me. And there's, I guess, a couple of ways people have said this, like success leaves clues or something. Guy Jim Rohn said that once, and I
Exactly.
was like, I just got to follow. I got to be seeking it out and be open minded about it, right?
Yeah.
And be open to learning it. So let me step back for a moment because there might be folks who are listening that, franchises they may equate to like the big food chains or whatever Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. But like, what is an actual franchise? Like, what does that mean for somebody who might be thinking about it?
I love that question. And I love it early in a conversation like this because I think the term franchise loses a lot of executive people or people with MBAs because they think franchising is only the big food and retail that we know as consumers. But there's a whole other world out there that is not food and retail. And in fact, as one of America's top franchise consultants, I always tell my candidates, you're going to have to beg me to show you food because there are just faster, easier, better ways to make money and more money with fewer moving parts. So, in terms of a definition, I think a franchise is a proven business model, right? Where we're buying down the learning curve of starting a business because we're partnering ourselves with people who've already done it. So
Mm,
they're going to provide that initial business plan, technology to help you run your business from day one, a marketing plan so that we can attract that perfect customer avatar, knowledge of how many dollars to spend on the marketing plan and where we're going to spend those dollars, right? All of these things as entrepreneurs we'd have to create, and then we'd have to trial and error them, and that's a lot of time and money that gets sunk, and that's why 90% of startup businesses typically fail. But in the franchise industry, that statistic of failure is not known here. Like, most franchise businesses that I work with will disclose success rates greater than 90%, some as high as 95 or 96% over a historic period of time. So every franchise that somebody would look at has to disclose their failure rate in this franchise disclosure document, which is mandated by the Federal Trade Commission. So to sum up the definition, we're buying down the learning curve because we're partnering ourselves with people. We're buying up the ramp up speed because from day one, we're executing on a proven plan, moving us toward profitability. And we have the opportunity to scale quickly, right? Because wealth is always created through scale. If you're a real estate investor, it's never about one rooftop, right? How can I leverage my time across multiple rooftops? The same thing in a franchise. In a business, you scale revenue with teams of people, you scale revenue with trucks or equipment, or you scale revenue per location, like one location multiplied by 2 or 3. So because as CEOs in franchises, we're working on our business rather than in our business, it allows for us and to understand kind of what that revenue per team or truck or location could be, then we can plan for that scale from the beginning and build the foundation to be able to support the scale that you're going to need to make the kind of money that you want to make.
No, I love that. And to your point, that concept of leverage. And it's weird. My wife doesn't like that word leverage for some weird reason. But like in the business world, it's so hugely important, right? To
It's
leverage your point,
it's
expertise
everything.
or resources or someone else's money, someone else's time, you name it, right? That's how you can build something bigger than you could on your own, right? That's
Correct.
just a reality. We're us
And you know
individually,
what? On that point, Tom, think about the brand equity. If you invest as a pioneer in a new up and coming franchise brand that is backed by, a franchisor that has a lot of track record of success and the money to build the next big American brand and whatever that thing is, like think brands like Massage Envy that sort of emerged out of
Mhm.
nowhere, or Planet Fitness, right?
Mhm.
So these are big American brands today, but back when they started, they were pioneering franchisees when nobody knew what a membership for a massage was, that opened these locations in their communities. And when the whole world woke up and everybody wanted not only a massage membership, but to own the Massage Envy, that's when those pioneering franchisees had a moment where they were getting 6, 7, 8 multiples of each location that they opened. Now, a Massage Envy doesn't hold on to that type of multiple, but there was a moment in time where owners could raise their hand and say, you want to own one? There's no more territory. You can buy mine, right? And if there's supply and demand, if there were no more left and people saw that this was a high in demand business, they were willing to pay that. So that brand equity that we're building collectively as franchisees also can create value. Sometimes franchisees say, I got my greatest ROI when I exited my franchise.
It's crazy. So, like for someone who's even thinking about getting into a franchise, because there's more buzz these days around the concept of passive income, which, frankly, you know, I'm big in real estate. It's not passive. there's a there's some
Nothing
active
is free, Tom.
right? Yeah, it's like
Let's
everyone
be
wants this
real.
magical thing. Like, let me just put money here, and it just like feeds me money. There's still some work and effort, primarily in a lot of these things. So owning a franchise, could it be passive in nature, or tell me what are maybe the spectrum maybe of opportunities here in the
Okay,
franchise
great
space?
question. So let's take it from the standpoint of a listener who has a W 2 job, who's thinking, wow, I'd love to build a cash flowing asset. I'd love to build a future I own and control and never have to worry about a recession or being laid off again, right? So I know there's a lot of listeners out there in that spot. And because that's my kind of my like number one candidate that I work with. So we have in franchising opportunities that we'll define as a semi-absentee owner. So
Mm,
semi-absentee by like Webster definition is probably like 20 to 25 hours a week with a full-time manager. So the owner can come in more kind of quote part-time with a full-time manager who's in it day to day. Like if you're not going to be there, somebody has to be there being the leader. A business needs a leader. It's not like the land that I invested in a month ago, right? That I just, doesn't need anybody, right? I just paid for it and it's going to just do its thing and build value for me over time, right? The business needs a leader. So that's semi-absentee ownership. Not every franchise out there allows a semi-absentee owner, but there is a subsection of opportunity that does allow you to kind of bridge, like keep one foot in corporate America and be building for your future. It works beautifully if you have a spouse that maybe has been at home raising kids and decides they're ready to go back to work and they want to like maybe be the manager or oversee the business part-time, or for a W-2 employee that works from home and has more flexibility in their schedule, an outside salesperson like pharma or medical
mm.
device where, maybe they're in the operating room every day until 10, but then the rest of their day is sort of unscheduled. So those types of W-2 careers can work really, really well. But this is what I say. Like, if you come to me with the dream to build a cash flowing asset and you love the idea of buying down the learning curve by partnering with a franchise, I mean, you're going to decide for you if it works. I'm going to just present the opportunities. You and your spouse have to figure out what your goals and dreams are, because, if you feel like the result or the long-term gain is there, I think people figure out how to make it work, right, in the short term, to kind of get to that, whether it's a 1 or 2 years before you can quit your job. Some, people figure out how to make it work, because it just depends on what that internal motivation and how hungry you are for the outcome that a business can provide for your future.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And this is where having a consultant like this is helpful, because there's probably different varieties of franchises. And I think about it from the perspective of, maybe to your point, maybe someone wants a lot more hand holding or involvement. And I've heard, unfortunately, some horror stories from people who've had franchises where the franchisor kind of just leaves them in the dust, right, with little to no support. So you kind of have to know what that arrangement or agreement looks like, and what level of support you're going to get or want in this, right? Is that factor into the kind of selection of a good franchise for someone?
Oh, sure. A lot of what my services are free, and I help people figure out what types of options match their goals. So that's what I do. And then once we have the 3 to 5 options that we're going to explore, I teach people how to do like due diligence so that they feel like they're asking the right questions, talking to the right people. I help with financing. I help in a very high level way get through that franchise disclosure document. I don't give legal advice, but I'll help you through it. And, basically kind of guiding your process to get you to where you feel you can confidently say yes to an opportunity or no. So that's what I do. But your original question was,
Oh, and just in terms of expectations around having support or not, right? Because
correct.
some folks, maybe they're self starters anyway, right? They just want the
Right.
model, they want to, right? Versus people who are maybe a little nervous, like be able to get that sort of extra sort of help to kind of get it going. Someone who maybe has never actually done anything related to starting a business, maybe a little more hesitant to do so, but making sure you have the right support in place, versus someone who's maybe has done something like this before, right?
Correct.
Doesn't need as much handholding. So there could be sort of a spectrum of support models. I don't even
There
know.
definitely are, Tom. There are, lots of franchises where every I is dotted and every T is crossed. Your $1 billion brands, those are the Titanics, right? Like those are, like if you're super nervous, as you said, more conservative. I think sometimes that environment feels more supportive to some people. And
Mhm.
then to other people, as you said, who maybe have prior business experience or are just a little more entrepreneurial, that environment could be suffocating. And so when you work with me, like if you were out there on your own just trying to select the right franchise, you would have to go all the way through the process, I think, to sort of figure out what level of support, if you could even figure it out. But when you work with me, like I mean, I have 21 years of relationships. I know which companies help that, especially like an engineer, someone who's very data driven
Mhm.
and wants a lot of track record and history and solidarity, that they can kind of look at all that data to feel comfortable, versus that MBA or that person who drove sales, for a big company, and they really kind of understand how to drive the revenue of a company, and they don't want all of that structure. They just want, as you said, to kind of like the entry point into the business, buy down that learning curve, but then be left alone to go make it their own. And there's shades of gray in between. And so from the beginning, you can know that when you work with me, you're going to be matched to the franchisors that will meet you kind of where you are as the investor that you are.
Yeah, yeah, because people are trying to get there in terms of however they define freedom or financial freedom. They're feeling like chained to their desk at this company, and they obviously don't want to just trade that for another one, right? Where
Exactly.
they have to play by these specific rules. And so those are things that you need just to kind of think through as investors, and get the consult from someone like Kim to be able to understand what you're getting into. with the
Right.
expectation.
There's always rules in a franchise because it's somebody else's brand ultimately, and it's their vision for bringing the brand to market. And that's why there's rules, right? So I always say, like, the rules aren't there to restrict us. The rules are there to protect us so that if somebody out there goes rogue and, like, walking into a
Mm,
Subway and seeing pizza on the menu, okay, that would be
right.
considered rogue, right? So the rules allow the franchisor to legally step in and make that person stop doing that because that could potentially hurt the neighboring franchisees. So the rules are there to keep us all playing nicely together in the same sandbox and building that brand equity that I talked about so that we can, if we have the dream to build and sell, which I believe every business should be built to be sold, that you have that potential exit strategy moment. So you want the rules there to continue to build that brand equity, but we can't resist the rules then when they don't work for us, right? So
Right.
listen,
Right.
I told you up front, I'm completely unemployable. I have to be my own boss of everything in my life, apparently, according to my dad, but it's pretty true. And yet I have found an organization that I've excelled in. I'm the number one consultant at FranChoice, and I've really made history for all other franchise consultants in terms of what I could build. So FranChoice provided me initial training and structure, but then I've made what I do my own and built it to a level that nobody ever thought was possible. So in my franchise, I've shown that you can get enough structure, but then make it your own.
That's great. Yeah, and so for something like this, right? Because it is an investment, right, of time and probably money. I mean, it could kind of run the gambit in terms of size, right? Because what is typically like? What is there even a typical like investment that goes along with this? Like, how much does that look like? And could get up to millions, I'm sure.
You got it. So there are franchise investments that are 50, 60, $70,000 all
Mhm.
in. And there are investments that are 3, 4, $5 million and like, again, a spectrum in between. So what I do with people before we really talk about money, the first thing I do is I get your net worth. I have you fill out a very basic questionnaire because I'm looking at you personally, professionally, and financially. It is an investment. And listen, the number one reason that businesses fail is because people run out of money. So
Mm.
you can't invest in a business you can't comfortably afford, right? Like that's the fastest way to fail. And that's not happening on Kim Daly's time. All right. So we're going to have you fill out a form and then we're going to get together and hopefully invite your spouse to this conversation. All the decision makers are going to be present. And before we talk about money in or money out, Kim is going to explain to you what every franchise business costs and why. How can you tell me, oh, this is what I'm comfortable investing when you don't even know what that amount of money translates to in my
Mhm.
language, right? We've got to be
Mhm.
speaking the same language. So, like, where this comes from, Tom, is people would say, well, I don't want to sell anything. I want a home based business and I want to be part time. Well, those things don't go together. Okay? Because if you're home based, right? That doesn't mean home based. It means you don't need the overhead of a location because nobody's coming to you. AKA you're going out and driving sales, right? So what I've done again over years of like just, I've worked with thousands of people is I've developed a system so that I can help people get up the learning curve very, very quickly. And it happens mostly in this first 1 hour consultation that we do together because money is the reason you're here. Money is the reason you won't be here. So we're going to address money really clearly upfront. So once I explain to people what the financial requirements are and what your money buys, then it allows them to sort of align the owner they thought they wanted to be and their skill sets and visually what it would look like. Would I operate from home? Would I operate from brick and mortar? Would I be like in a warehousing space? So that when I come back with opportunity, they're not like blown out of the water thinking, well, I
Mm.
thought it was going to look like this. And you're saying this. And there's this huge disconnect between our communication. So we get very, very clear. And I always tell people, if you're going to make it about money, it's like it's not the right time or it costs more than you thought for the business you want, you're going to figure that out in 20 minutes. So you're not going to have to spend 2 months going through the gyrations of, should I invest in a franchise? If money is the factor, you're going to figure that out very, very quickly. So
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, no, it's really helpful because it's also because I equate it to an investment. People sometimes ask me like, "What should I invest in?" And I said, "Well, what are you interested in? What do you know?" So part of it is getting clear to why you're investing in this, right? Same with franchise, right? Why do you want this? What is it going to bring you that you don't have today? And get clear about that. And the money, obviously, conversations happen, but it's really to me, I would hate to have people get into investments that keeps them up every single night or
it's
makes
no
them
good.
dread life, right? In some respects, I don't care how much return you're getting. If it's going to cause that much damage to your life, then it isn't a good fit. But that's the type of stuff I think I encourage people to always think about, and I'm sure it applies perfectly with considering a franchise.
Perfectly. We always begin with the end in mind. Why are we doing this? What do you envision in your future? How do you want this business to play a role or not play a role? Exactly. You're so spot on. Yep. And going back to the money part, Tom. So there's a myth out there that the level of investment going into a franchise will correlate to the potential to earn, right? People think, oh, more money in must mean I can
Mm-hmm.
make more money. It's absolutely untrue. Money and time go together. So the money going in correlates to the owner's time commitment from day one. And that's what I clearly show, especially if you want to be that semi-absentee investor. I want to show you like, well, then, okay, then there's always a trade-off of time and money, right? I always tell people, if you find the holy grail where you don't have to put in a lot of money and you don't have to put in a lot of time, you have to remember Kim Daly and call me back because it's always one or the other. You can't have it all. And so there's that. And then also, if we are building this to think about, building wealth for your future to like, let's say the first goal is I want to ditch my W-2 and I make 200 grand a year. Well, then you need a franchise investment that can scale to the potential that can make that kind of money, right? So that's another thing. People invest in businesses and maybe their market is saturated and they can only open one store, or right, they invest in the wrong business for the outcome they're trying to get to. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's no good either. You just went through all of that work to start a business that's never even going to make you the kind of money that you needed to make so you can leave your job, which was your goal. So again, without a consultant who can help put all of these pieces together before you get all excited about what the business is, I don't know how people do it. I think they do spend a lot of time and ultimately probably end up not investing simply because they don't know what they don't know. And I don't know if you can feel comfortable making a big investment, whether it's 50,000 or 200,000, right? If you don't know what you don't know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I came across it more recently too, and it kind of fits with this sort of concept. Like they don't have some people don't want to commit until you have absolute certainty that's going to be successful, and nothing certain, absolute 100% certain in anything, right? There's nothing, but until you can have the level of commitment around it that this is something worthy for my life or for my family or whatever it is that you care about, you can't even move forward, right? Because you don't have the vision of it, right? And then it doesn't allow you to have the courage to do the things that are difficult, take the risk, right? And move forward. And people just stay put. And I went through that myself personally through life and even my finances. But having that courage and then obviously consultants like you and experts to help you get closer to it, people never move, right? They'll
It's so
stay in the
true.
same. And that's why I
It's
encourage
hard to
people just
change your life. It's even with my help. I had a guy that was scheduled to sign on last Friday, and the franchisor called me and he was like, he decided not to do it, like at the 11th hour. Now, I talked to him. He's fine. He panicked. But, so even with my help, look, it's like, it's a big deal. And I celebrate these, I tell people, you got to celebrate this when you sign that franchise agreement. This is a really, really big day because a lot of people can think about it, but not everybody can actually take action. And it goes back to what you just said so perfectly, Tom. You got to know your why, and it's got to be so strong in you, right? Like you and I started before we hit record, like the only way to really build true financial security is to own businesses and real estate. It's not the traditional way that we were all taught when we were younger, right? Get a job, work for somebody else, put your money in the stock market. Those things don't work. What works is ownership and control, cash flowing assets, tax advantages, right? The idea that you can build tax-free wealth. There are books written on that subject, right? So this is what I'm helping people get into. Oftentimes, this is franchising or starting a business through a franchise is their first foray into the alternative investment space. But there's a whole other world out here beyond franchising that includes alternative investments that, in franchising or business ownership may not be the best place for someone to start or the right investment. And I'm not here to push everybody into it, but I'm going to educate you so you can really make sure that you understand what you're doing. Because even if you are going to say yes, again, I really want you to make sure you understand what you're doing. Because there's also a myth in franchising that the franchisor is going to make me successful. I call this the silent killer. Nobody's saying it, Tom, but like inside every franchisee, they're thinking it. You, Mr. Franchisor, are going to make me successful. And when it comes out, it's not when they're successful. When it comes out is when they're not successful. And they're like, like toddlers, like, it was your job to make me successful. Of course, I'm like being overly dramatic, but like where they're kind of like looking, it was their fault. It wasn't my fault that I wasn't successful. It's blaming their lack of success on the brand or the franchisor or the market or the economy. And I'm not saying that the franchisor has no obligation to you. Of course they do, but it's typically not what people think it is until they work with someone like me who's going to set you free from the idea that somebody else other than you is going to control your success. Again, we wish that were the case. It's never the case.
No, I agree with you. Right. And it is about, being down to basics, taking responsibility. If you want something more in life, it likely is going to come with some hard work. There might be some luck involved with things. And I look back at my life and I said, there were some lucky things that happened that were out of my control, but most of the success came from me pushing it and doing things that maybe were difficult and driving, just like you did, drive your own sort of ship, drive your own car with it to create your life that you wanted. And that takes effort, right? No one's just going to give that to you. And that's why for something like this or any other alternative investments or paths you take, if you don't take that ownership, I think it's the chances of success are limited, right? Because you can't rely on others, right? To control it, right?
Right.
You get
We
the
wish we
expertise.
could. And that
we wish we
also in a franchise is why there's a varying range of break evens. There's a varying range of, average unit volume there's an average unit volume, but there's a varying range of like, the top may be at 1 million and the average may be at 500,000 and the low may be at 300,000. And people are looking at these numbers in the franchise disclosure document like, well, which one is it? I don't know. Which one is it? It's on you to go. And, they're just showing you the range because by law, that's what they have to do. But again, and therein lies that implication that in a franchise, someone's going to hand me the plan and it's just going to work, or build it and they will come. We wish, right? If you're lucky enough to invest in a brand that by the time you're investing in it, it is the next big American thing. And the line like Chick-fil-A, you open it and the line's out the door from day one. But the reality is by the time a brand reaches that kind of like status, usually there's not good territory left, right? You're looking at secondary or tertiary markets, which are never going to be that kind of a store. So the time to get in most cases, Tom, is at the ground floor. You want to be one of those pioneers who helped lift that brand to that place again, because not just because that's going to be the more positively or the more profitable ride up, but also because then you're in position for that brand equity when people want what you have and there is no more good territory, and you can say, well, you can buy mine, and then you can exit and go, buy another business and start all over. So for multiple reasons, it's usually the ride up that really is the more profitable point. But if you're not a big risk taker, that has some implied risk, because what if that brand doesn't go on to become the
Hmm.
next big thing, and just sort of like chugs along? You might still make a great living. You might still build a nice life for yourself. You just might not have that exit strategy moment with that big multiple, but that may be fine too.
Yeah, well, that's it. And to each his own. This is where you help people sort of think through that. I think that's probably the hardest part to kind of get clarity on, to think through what this might mean for you, or kind of what you how you want to kind of shape your future. And that comes with some energy and partnership with people like you to help think through it. So it's really a huge, I think, for folks who are thinking about change in their lives. I highly encourage you to meet with people like Kim or others who are providing some guidance and allows you to sort of pave your own path. And so with that, Kim, like for folks who are maybe interested in exploring in this, is this something they can reach out to you directly for a consult? Like how best to kind of work with you?
Love it. So, if you are intrigued and you want to learn more, first of all, you can go to my YouTube channel. I have over 500 videos on all things franchising. If you have questions about fees or process, or what is this FDD she's talking about, or, what do you mean people can fail in a franchise? I mean, I've got lots and lots of content on kimdaly.tv, and that's my last name is Daly. If you know you're just ready to begin, you can go directly to my website. I have a free Creating Wealth Through Franchising webinar that we've just launched for free. Eventually, we will be charging it for it, but it's sort of like a mini boot camp. It's a 30-minute workshop that you can take to really help your mind get wrapped around what is this thing of a franchise, and how can it work for me? And if you're ready to just begin, my contact information is right there. And my website is thedalycoach.com. And that's the DALY coach.com.
Very nice, very nice. And I'm looking forward to when you're going to start a Shark Tank version of franchising. Maybe is there a show like
I
that
don't
exists?
know. I'm not doing that.
You'd be a great personality for it. I mean, so I just wonder for people who want to get into entrepreneurship. I think people equate to Shark Tank, and it's a cool place, but that's obviously in the kind of creating stages of things. This is obviously a little bit further along, but still important. So important to grow.
It's a
Awesome.
fun show to watch for sure.
Yeah.
I always cringe though when people show up and they have no like revenue. I'm like, have you watched this show before? You need revenue if you want them to invest.
I'm no business master, but I recognize that point. It's very big. And then they give some crazy valuation of it. Buying this guy, but whatever. At least you're trying. They're giving it a shot. At least they're putting
Exactly.
it
I
out
think they
there.
just put those people on just for the sheer enjoyment and to
Yeah,
aggravate people like me on the other side of the screen.
yes, like the Gong Show when they put someone in that should never be on there. Um, but anyway, so listen, I really love this conversation. It's really inspired me to think about it, and hopefully, audience, I think they got tons out of it, and we'll put all that information in the show notes for them to be able to reach out to you. Thanks so much for spending time and sharing your vast amounts of wisdom around this. Really appreciate it, and certainly hopefully inspire some folks to take some action. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Tom.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.